I thought my husband was having an affair with his secretary, but when I finally confronted them, the truth was so much worse than I could have imagined. It started with the usual signs. Late nights at the office, hushed phone calls that ended when I walked into the room, receipts for expensive dinners I'd never attended. For 8 months, I collected evidence like some kind of detective. Screenshots of texts, credit card statements, a lipstick shade I'd never worn, tucked into his jacket pocket. His secretary, Melanie, was 26. Beautiful in that effortless way that made my 42-year-old insecurity spiral. She'd joined the firm last year, and suddenly my husband of 18 years needed to work until midnight 4 times a week. The math wasn't complicated. I hired a private investigator anyway. Needed proof before I called my divorce lawyer. The photos came back exactly as expected. My husband and Melanie leaving hotels together, getting into cars, his hand on her lower back in that possessive way he used to touch me. But then the investigator called with something odd. Your husband isn't just seeing her, he said carefully. He's been meeting with several men. Business associates, maybe? Or lawyers? I didn't understand what that meant until I followed them myself. Last Thursday, I tracked them to a restaurant downtown. Through the window, I watched my husband and Melanie sit across from a couple in their 60s. Everyone was smiling, laughing. My husband reached across the table and held Melanie's hand, while the older couple nodded approvingly. I couldn't take it anymore. I marched inside and straight to their table. The laughter died instantly. 4 guilty faces stared up at me. Having fun? I asked, my voice shaking. My husband went pale. Honey, I can explain. Save it, I snapped. I know everything. The older woman cleared her throat. Perhaps we should— No, I interrupted. I want to hear this. All of it. That's when Melanie spoke. Her voice was quiet, almost apologetic. Mrs. Hoffman, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Oh, I understand perfectly, I said. You're sleeping with my husband. I'm not, she said firmly. I'm his daughter. The world tilted. What? My husband closed his eyes. I was going to tell you. I just needed the right time. Tell me what? But even as I asked, pieces were falling into place. The resemblance I'd ignored. The way he looked at her, protective and proud. The older couple sitting across from them. His expression, her eyes. I had an affair, my husband said quietly. 19 years ago, before I met you. Melanie's mother never told me she was pregnant. She raised her alone. When Melanie turned 18, she hired a private investigator to find me. She reached out last year. The older couple, Melanie's maternal grandparents, nodded. We wanted them to have a relationship, the woman said. He's been trying to make up for lost time. And you didn't think to tell your wife? I managed to say. I was terrified, he admitted. You always said you didn't want kids. I thought if you knew I had a daughter— He trailed off. I thought I'd lose you. My legs felt weak. I grabbed the back of an empty chair. So instead, you made me think you were cheating. Do you have any idea what these months have been like? I'm sorry, he whispered. I just kept putting it off. And then it got too complicated. She started working at the firm and— Wait, I interrupted, a new horror dawning. Your father owns the firm. Did you hire her because— He didn't want me to struggle, Melanie said softly. He's been paying my student loans, helping with my apartment. We've been having dinner once a week, just getting to know each other, that's all. I stared at my husband. This man I thought I knew completely. What else haven't you told me? He opened his mouth to answer, but his phone rang. He glanced at the screen and his face went white. It's my dad, he answered, listened for 10 seconds, then stood abruptly. We need to go. Now. What's wrong? Melanie asked, alarmed. Dad's at the office. The FBI just showed up with a warrant. His hands were shaking as he grabbed his jacket. He told me to get a lawyer, to not say anything to anyone. The restaurant suddenly felt too small, too bright. I watched my husband's panic and felt my own rising. What could the FBI possibly want with your father? I don't know, he said, but his eyes told a different story. He knew something, or suspected it. Melanie stood too. Should I come? No, my husband said quickly. Stay here. This has nothing to do with you. But I work there, she protested. If something's wrong with the firm, just stay, he repeated, then looked at me. I need to go. I followed him outside, my confrontation forgotten in the chaos. We didn't speak during the drive downtown. His knuckles were white on the steering wheel. Twice he reached for his phone, then thought better of it. The firm's building was surrounded by black SUVs. Federal agents moved in and out of the glass doors, carrying boxes of files. My father-in-law stood on the sidewalk, flanked by 2 men in expensive suits who had lawyer written all over them. Stay in the car, my husband ordered. Absolutely not, I said, getting out. His father saw us approaching, and his face hardened. I told you not to come here. What's happening? My husband demanded. Not here, one of the lawyers said sharply. We need to go somewhere private. We ended up in a coffee shop 6 blocks away. The lawyers ordered everyone to put their phones in the center of the table. They could be listening, the older one explained. Who? I asked. Federal prosecutors, he said. Your father-in-law is being investigated for fraud, money laundering, and tax evasion. Possibly more. The room spun. My husband looked like he might vomit. How long have you known? His father met his eyes. 6 months? Maybe longer? I thought I could fix it before anyone noticed. Fix what? I demanded. What did you do? The lawyers exchanged glances. The younger one spoke carefully. Mr. Hoffman Sr. has been running a scheme through the firm for approximately 8 years. Client funds were being diverted into shell companies, then invested in high-risk ventures. When those ventures failed, he used new client money to cover the losses. That's a Ponzi scheme, I said, my voice hollow. Essentially, yes. My husband's voice was barely audible. How much? We're still determining the full scope, the lawyer said, but preliminary estimates suggest around $40 million. The number hung in the air like smoke. $40 million. Stolen from clients who trusted the firm, who trusted my father-in-law's reputation. The partners, my husband said suddenly. Do they know? We don't think so, the lawyer replied. Your father was very careful to keep this compartmentalized, but the FBI will interview everyone, every employee, every partner, every family member, including me, my husband finished. Including you, the lawyer confirmed. They'll want to know what you knew and when you knew it. I didn't know anything, my husband said desperately. His father finally spoke. I kept you out of it deliberately. I handled all the accounting myself. The offshore accounts, the transfers, everything. You're clean. Clean? I repeated incredulously. His name is on the firm. He'll be implicated whether he knew or not. The lawyers nodded grimly. Your reputation will take a hit, the older one said. Clients will leave. The firm will likely collapse. You should prepare for the worst. I thought about our house. The mortgage I'd insisted we pay down, our saving, most of which came from my inheritance, not his salary. At least we had that. Your personal accounts might be frozen, the younger lawyer added, as if reading my mind. If they believe you benefited from the fraud, they could seize assets. I didn't benefit, my husband protested. I work for the firm. I earn a salary. That's it. Your salary is funded by stolen money, the lawyer pointed out. That could be considered proceeds of crime. We sat in silence. Around us, people ordered lattes and worked on laptops, oblivious to our lives disintegrating. There's something else, his father said quietly. The girl, Melanie. My husband's head snapped up. What about her? I hired her because you asked me to, but I've been paying her separately from the firm payroll. He paused, using the same accounts the FBI just seized. You paid my daughter with stolen money, my husband said slowly. I didn't think it would matter, his father said defensively. It was just her salary, her student loans, small amounts. Small amounts that tie her directly to your fraud, the older lawyer said sharply. They'll investigate her too, question why she was receiving payments from offshore accounts. My husband stood abruptly, knocking his chair backward. She has nothing to do with this. She didn't even know about the accounts. Can you prove that? The lawyer asked. He couldn't. We all knew it. I drove home alone. My husband stayed with the lawyers, preparing for what was coming. I sat in our living room, staring at the walls we'd painted ourselves, the furniture we'd chosen together. 18 years of marriage. And I'd spent the last 8 months thinking the worst thing he'd done was have an affair. How naive I'd been. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Melanie. Can we talk? I should have said no. Should have listened to the lawyer's warnings about not discussing anything with anyone, but I was so tired of secrets. Come over, I replied, sending my address. She arrived 40 minutes later, her eyes red from crying. Did you know? She asked the moment I opened the door. About the fraud? No. About you being his daughter? I just found out tonight. We sat across from each other like strangers, which I suppose we were. I got a call from the FBI, she said. They want to interview me tomorrow. They asked about payments into my bank account, amounts that don't match my salary. She looked up at me. I thought he was just being generous, helping me because we were family. He was, I said. He just used the wrong money to do it. Will I go to jail? Her voice cracked. I don't know, I admitted. Did you know where the money came from? No, I swear. He said it was from a family trust, that he wanted to help me catch up after my mom raised me alone. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I should have questioned it, should have asked more, but I wanted so badly to believe he cared. And there it was, the thing we all wanted to believe, that the people we loved were good, that their help came without strings or consequences. He does care, I said quietly. He's just an idiot. She laughed through her tears. That's one word for it. We talked for hours that night. She told me about growing up without a father, about the questions her mother refused to answer, about hiring the private investigator on her 18th birthday, with money she'd saved from working at a grocery store. I had this fantasy, she admitted, that he'd be this amazing person, that he'd have a good reason for not being there, that once he knew about me, everything would be perfect. And instead I got a father who committed fraud, who paid me with stolen money, who's probably going to prison. She wiped her eyes. My mom was right. She always said looking for him would only bring pain. She tried to protect you, I said. By lying to me my entire childhood? By letting me believe I wasn't wanted? Melanie's voice rose. At least now I know the truth, even if the truth is terrible. My phone rang. My husband. I answered and put it on speaker so Melanie could hear. The lawyers say we need to separate our finances immediately, he said without preamble. Transfer everything into your name only. The inheritance from your mother, our savings, the house, all of it. That looks like we're hiding assets, I protested. The inheritance was yours before we married. It's protected. The lawyers can document that. But if it stays in joint accounts, the FBI could freeze it along with everything else. I thought of my mother, who'd saved every penny working as a school teacher, who'd left me $180,000 with explicit instructions to keep it separate, to protect myself. She'd never trusted my father-in-law, had tried to warn me about marrying into his family. I should have listened. Fine, I said. I'll go to the bank tomorrow. There's more, he continued. They're going to arrest Dad, probably tomorrow or the next day. The lawyers are negotiating his surrender. Melanie made a small sound. I reached across and squeezed her hand. And Melanie? I asked. What about her? The lawyers think if she cooperates fully, tells them everything she knows about the payments, she'll be okay. She didn't know about the fraud. She can't be held responsible for accepting money she believed was legitimate. That's not much comfort, I said. It's all we have right now. He came home past midnight. I was still awake, sitting in the dark. He collapsed beside me on the couch. I keep thinking about all the signs I missed, he said. Dad working late all the time. His stress levels. The way he'd changed the subject whenever I asked about certain clients. You couldn't have known, I said, though I wasn't sure I believed it. I should have, he insisted. I'm his son. I work at the firm. How did I not see it? Because he didn't want you to see it, I said. He compartmentalized. That's what the lawyer said. He protected you. By making me complicit, my husband said bitterly. Every paycheck I cashed, every bonus I deposited, it was all dirty money. And now Melanie's caught up in it too. The daughter I just found. The relationship I was trying to build. He put his head in his hands. What have I done? You didn't do anything, I said firmly. Your father did this. Not you. But I wondered if that was true. If his guilt by association, his name on the firm, his salary from those accounts, made him responsible somehow. If my comfort, my security, my comfortable life had been built on theft. The arrests came on Tuesday morning. Federal agents showed up at his father's house at 6 a.m. I watched the news footage of him being led out in handcuffs, his face stoic. The reporters shouted questions. The neighbors filmed on their phones. His mugshot was online within an hour. The firm collapsed by noon. Partners scrambled to distance themselves. Employees cleaned out their desks. Clients filed lawsuits. The carefully built reputation of 30 years disintegrated in a single day. My husband went to the office anyway, sat at his desk and called every client personally. I didn't know, he told them, over and over. I'm so sorry. I didn't know. Most hung up. Some shouted. A few threatened violence. One elderly woman stayed on the line. Her name was Dorothy. She'd trusted my father-in-law with her husband's life insurance payout. $250,000 that was supposed to fund her retirement. I believed him, she said, her voice shaking. He came to my husband's funeral, sent flowers, told me he'd take care of everything, that my money was safe. My husband listened to her cry, apologized over and over, offered to help however he could. There's nothing you can do, she said finally. The money's gone. I'll be working until I die now. She hung up. My husband sat staring at his phone for an hour. That night, I found him in our garage, going through boxes of old files. What are you doing? Looking for proof, he said. Something that shows I didn't know, that I wasn't involved. You don't need proof, I said. You're innocent. Am I? He looked up at me, his eyes hollow. I signed off on client reports, approved account transfers. My name is on documents that facilitated this fraud. Even if I didn't know what I was signing, I still signed it. I had no answer for that. Melanie's interview with the FBI lasted 4 hours. She called me afterward, exhausted. They showed me account statements, she said. Deposits from places I'd never heard of. Shell companies in the Cayman Islands, Luxembourg, Panama. They asked if I'd helped set them up, if I'd known they were connected to the firm. What did you tell them? The truth. That I had no idea. That I thought my father was helping me from his own money. She paused. They didn't believe me at first. Kept asking the same questions different ways. Trying to trip me up. Did you have a lawyer? Yes. He kept telling me just to answer honestly, not to elaborate or speculate. It was terrifying. The FBI agent assigned to her case called me directly 2 days later, asked if I'd be willing to answer questions about Melanie, about when I first met her, what I knew about her relationship with my husband. I met him at a downtown office building. Agent Rodriguez was younger than I expected, professional but not unkind. I need to understand the timeline, he said. When did your husband first mention Melanie to you? He didn't, I admitted. I found out about her the same night you raided the firm. His eyebrows rose. He kept her existence secret from you? Yes. Why? I explained about my reluctance to have children, about my husband's fear of losing me, about the months I'd spent thinking he was having an affair. Agent Rodriguez took notes. And Melanie, when did you first become aware she worked at the firm? 8 months ago. But I didn't know she was his daughter. I thought she was his secretary, thought they were having an affair. Because of the late nights? The secret meetings? Yes. He leaned back in his chair. From an outside perspective, this looks very suspicious. Unknown woman appears, gets hired immediately, receives payments from offshore accounts, spends significant time with the senior partner's son. I know how it looks, I said. But she's not part of this. She's a victim too. Maybe, he said. Or maybe she's an incredibly good liar. The doubt he planted festered. I found myself watching Melanie differently, wondering if her tears were genuine, if her shock was real, if she'd known more than she claimed. I hated myself for it. But the doubt remained. The media descended like vultures. Reporters camped outside our house. My husband's photo appeared on every local news station. Social media tore us apart. People who'd never met us had opinions about our guilt, our morals, our marriage. Someone leaked my name, my workplace. Within a day, I was getting threatening emails. The paralegal firm I'd just joined asked me to resign. For the good of our reputation, they said. I lasted 2 weeks before I stopped leaving the house. Stopped answering my phone. Stopped reading the news. Melanie had it worse. Her photo circulated with captions like fraud daughter and mystery woman in Ponzi scheme. Her apartment building asked her to leave. Her landlord claimed other tenants felt unsafe. She showed up at my door at 2 a.m., carrying 2 suitcases. I have nowhere else to go. I should have said no. Should have protected myself. But I couldn't leave her on the street. Just for a few days, I said, until you find something else. She moved into our guest room. We became strange roommates. 2 women connected by the same man's lies, united by shared trauma and public humiliation. My husband moved out a week later. Not because I asked him to, but because his presence brought more reporters, more cameras, more attention we couldn't afford. He rented a studio apartment across town. We talked on the phone every night. Long, exhausted conversations about lawyers and legal strategies and how we'd pay for any of it. I found another job, he said one night. Contract work, reviewing documents for a small firm. That's good, I said. They're paying me half what I used to make, and only because they don't know who I am yet. They'll find out, I said quietly. I know. He lasted 6 days before someone recognized his name. The firm let him go immediately. No explanation, just a polite email saying his services were no longer needed. We met her mother in Cincinnati. Melanie's grandmother had convinced her to talk with us, to help clear her daughter's name. She looked like an older version of Melanie. Same eyes, same bone structure. But where Melanie was soft, her mother was hardened. Years of struggle had carved lines into her face. I told her not to look for him, she said before we'd even sat down. Told her nothing good would come from it. You were right, Melanie said quietly. Her mother's expression softened slightly. I usually am. We sat in a diner booth, coffee growing cold between us. Melanie's mother told her story, about meeting my father-in-law at a conference, about their brief affair, about discovering she was pregnant weeks after he'd ended things. I tried to tell him, she said. Called his office, left messages. He never called back. He probably never got them, my husband said. Dad had a secretary who screened his calls. If she thought you were trying to cause trouble, she was protecting him, Melanie's mother finished bitterly. Of course she was. Everyone protected him, right up until the FBI showed up. She agreed to testify, to provide bank records showing she'd received no support, to document her struggles as a single mother, to prove Melanie had no connection to the Hoffman family fortune until last year. But I want something in return, she said, looking at my husband. I want you to leave her alone. Stop trying to be her father. You've caused enough damage. My husband looked like she'd slapped him. I'm trying to help. By pulling her into a federal investigation, by getting her fired, by making her a target for every reporter in the country. Her voice rose. The best thing you can do for my daughter is disappear from her life. Mom, Melanie protested. No, her mother said firmly. I let you make this mistake once. I won't watch you make it again. The drive back was silent. Melanie stared out the window. My husband gripped the steering wheel. I sat in the back seat, feeling like an intruder in their grief. The trial preparation consumed the next 11 months. Lawyers deposed everyone who'd ever worked at the firm. Accountants traced every dollar. Victims lined up to testify about their losses. We learned the full scope of the fraud. Not $40 million, closer to $60 million, money stolen over 13 years, not 8. Shell companies in 15 countries. Fake investment reports. Forged documents. A web of lies so complex it took the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit 4 months to untangle it all. My father-in-law's defense strategy was simple. Deny everything. Claim the prosecutors were persecuting a successful businessman. Suggest the missing money was just poor investments, not fraud. The lawyers advised against it. Told him to take a plea deal. To show remorse and cooperate in exchange for a reduced sentence. He refused. I'm not admitting to crimes I didn't commit, he told us during a supervised visit at the federal detention center. Dad, my husband said, the evidence is overwhelming. The bank records, the emails, can all be explained, his father interrupted. I made some bad business decisions. That's not the same as fraud. You created fake companies, I said. You forged client signatures. You transferred money to offshore accounts and lied about where it went. He looked at me with something like pity. You don't understand business. Sometimes you have to be creative to generate returns. Creative, I repeated. You stole from retirees, from charities, from people who trusted you. They'll get their money back, he said dismissively, once my investments mature. Even then, facing years in prison, he believed his own lies. The trial began on a cold Monday in February. The courtroom filled with victims, with reporters, with federal agents who'd spent months building the case. I sat in the gallery with Melanie. My husband sat with his father's legal team, trying to distance himself while still supporting his dad. An impossible position. The prosecution's opening statement took 2 hours. They laid out the scheme in devastating detail, showed charts and graphs of money flowing from client accounts to shell companies to my father-in-law's personal use. This wasn't a businessman making risky investments, the prosecutor said. This was a con artist running a sophisticated scheme to enrich himself at others' expense. The defense countered with the persecution angle, painted my father-in-law as a hard-working lawyer who'd made some questionable decisions, but never intended to harm anyone. Intent matters in fraud cases, the defense attorney argued. Our client believed his investments would pay off, believed he'd be able to return client money with interest. That's not fraud. That's optimism. The jury looked skeptical. Victim testimony started on day 4. Dorothy, the widow who'd lost her husband's life insurance money, went first. She described my father-in-law's sympathy at the funeral, his promises to take care of her, his assurances that her money was safe. He sent me quarterly statements, she said, her voice shaking. Showed my account growing. I thought I was secure. Thought I could retire. When did you learn the statements were fake? The prosecutor asked. When the FBI called me, told me my account was empty, that the returns I'd been seeing were fabricated. She looked directly at my father-in-law. He sat at my kitchen table, drank my coffee, looked me in the eye and lied. One by one, victims took the stand. A small business owner who'd lost his company's pension fund, a teacher who'd invested her life savings, a young couple who'd trusted my father-in-law with money meant for their disabled son's care. Each story was worse than the last, each loss more devastating. My husband couldn't watch, left the courtroom during testimony, returned only when the prosecutors moved on to the financial evidence. On day 8, they called Melanie. She'd been subpoenaed as a witness, not for the defense or prosecution, but as a fact witness about the payments she'd received. She walked to the stand in a simple gray suit, hands trembling, eyes locked straight ahead. The prosecutor was gentle with her, asked about when she'd found her father, how they'd reconnected, what he'd told her about the payments. He said it was from a family trust, Melanie testified, that he wanted to help me because he'd missed so much of my life. I believed him. Did you ever question where the money came from? No. I thought he was wealthy, successful. I had no reason to doubt him. And if you'd known the money was stolen from fraud victims? I never would have accepted it, she said, her voice breaking. I would have told the authorities immediately. The defense attorney's cross-examination was brutal, suggested she'd known exactly what was happening, that she'd been complicit, that showing up in my father-in-law's life when she did was awfully convenient. Isn't it true that you contacted Mr. Hoffman right when his scheme was starting to unravel? The attorney asked. No, Melanie said. I contacted him a year before the FBI investigation began. And isn't it convenient that you, a struggling young woman with student debt, suddenly found a wealthy father willing to pay for everything? It wasn't convenient, Melanie said quietly. It was the worst thing that ever happened to me. The jury seemed moved by her testimony. Whether they believed her was another question. My turn came on day 10. They called me to testify about my husband's knowledge or lack thereof, about his work at the firm, about our finances. I swore to tell the truth, sat in the witness box, looked out at the courtroom full of strangers judging my life. The prosecutor asked about my husband's role at the firm. Did he ever mention concerns about client accounts? No. Did he ever suggest his father was engaged in illegal activity? No. Did you notice any unusual spending? Any indication your family was living beyond your means? No, we lived modestly. My inheritance provided most of our security. His salary was comfortable but not excessive. The defense attorney asked different questions about my husband's access to client files, about the documents he'd signed, about whether he should have known what was happening. You're asking me to speculate, I said. I'm asking for your opinion as his wife. As someone who knows him intimately, I looked at my husband, at the man I'd loved for 18 years. He trusted his father, maybe too much, but he didn't know about the fraud. I'm certain of that. How can you be certain? Because if he'd known, he would have stopped it, would have reported it, would have chosen integrity over family loyalty. I wanted to believe that. Needed to believe it. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. We waited in a conference room down the hall. My husband paced. Melanie cried quietly. I stared at the wall and wondered how our lives had come to this. When the jury returned, the foreman read the verdict. Guilty on all counts. Wire fraud, mail fraud, money laundering, tax evasion, 24 separate counts in total. My father-in-law showed no emotion, just stood there as the judge thanked the jury and scheduled sentencing. Outside the courthouse, victims celebrated. Dorothy hugged the prosecutors. Others gave statements to the press about justice being served. We left through a side exit, trying to avoid the cameras, trying to become invisible. Sentencing came 6 weeks later. The judge was merciless. You were given a position of trust, she said. Clients believed in your integrity, your expertise, your word. You exploited that trust for personal gain. You have shown no remorse, no acceptance of responsibility, no attempt to make your victims whole. She sentenced him to 22 years in federal prison. He'd be 79 when released, if he lived that long. My husband watched his father led away in shackles. We drove home in silence. That night, he finally broke, sobbed for hours in my arms, for his father, for himself, for the life we'd lost. I keep thinking I should hate him, he said, but he's still my dad. The man who taught me to ride a bike, who came to my baseball games, who walked me through my first legal brief. You can hate what he did and still love who he was, I said. They're not mutually exclusive, but the truth was more complicated, because who my father-in-law was and what he'd done were inseparable. The same ambition that built the firm had driven him to fraud. The same confidence clients trusted had enabled his lies. The aftermath was slow devastation. The firm's assets were liquidated to repay victims. They recovered maybe 30 cents on the dollar. Not enough. Never enough. My husband couldn't find legitimate work. His name was toxic. His reputation destroyed. He took jobs under the table. Day labor, deliveries, anything to earn money without background checks. I got work eventually. A small nonprofit that helped domestic violence survivors. They didn't care about my last name, just whether I could help their clients navigate the legal system. Melanie struggled the most. The FBI cleared her formally, but public opinion remained divided. Half saw her as a victim, half saw her as complicit. Job applications went unanswered. Apartments denied her. She existed in limbo. She lived with me for 8 months while trying to rebuild. We became close in that forced proximity, learned each other's rhythms, shared quiet dinners and late-night conversations about everything we'd lost. Do you ever wish you'd never found him? I asked her one night. Every day, she admitted. But if I hadn't, I wouldn't have found you, or gotten this chance to understand who he really was. Maybe that's worth something, is it? She thought for a long time. I don't know yet. My husband and I filed for divorce 4 months after sentencing, not because I didn't love him anymore, but because I couldn't keep carrying the weight of his family's crimes, couldn't keep wondering if our life together had been built on stolen foundations. I understand, he said when I told him. I'd leave me too. It's not about leaving you, I said. It's about saving myself. We split everything fairly. The house sold at a loss, the market having soured on our neighborhood after the scandal. We divided the proceeds. I kept my inheritance, which had dwindled paying lawyers and living expenses, but still remained mostly intact. He took the debt, the legal fees his father's defense had incurred, the lawsuits from former clients seeking any compensation they could find. The divorce was final on a Thursday. We signed papers in separate rooms, didn't even see each other. Our lawyers handled everything. I cried that night, not for the marriage ending, but for everything it represented. The life I'd thought I was building, the security I'd believed was real, the future I'd imagined that evaporated the night the FBI showed up. Melanie stayed close. She'd become the daughter I never had, bonded by trauma and survival. She went back to school using federal aid, got her MBA, and found work with a nonprofit helping fraud victims navigate recovery. I figured I have unique insight, she said when she got the job offer, into how victims think and feel, how the fraud destroys more than just finances. She was good at it, really good. Victims trusted her in ways they didn't trust others, maybe because she understood betrayal intimately, Maybe because her empathy was earned through her own suffering, my ex-husband rebuilt slowly, changed his name legally, dropping the Hoffman that had become synonymous with fraud, started over in a different city as Griffin Hayes, his mother's maiden name, a fresh start. He worked as a contract lawyer for small firms that needed help but couldn't afford full-time staff. He was overqualified and underpaid, but grateful for the work. Grateful no one asked too many questions about his past. We texted occasionally, birthday wishes, holiday greetings, the careful friendship of people who once loved each other but couldn't survive what life threw at them. I ran into him last year at Melanie's wedding. She'd met someone at her nonprofit, another survivor of financial fraud. They understood each other's damage. Their scars matched. My ex walked her down the aisle because her mother still wouldn't speak to her, hadn't forgiven her for seeking out her father, for getting caught up in his destruction. Some people can't move past betrayal, Melanie had said when explaining her mother's absence. Even when staying angry hurts them more than it hurts me. The wedding was small, intimate, just people who'd stood by Melanie through the worst of it. I caught my ex's eye during the ceremony. He smiled, sad but genuine. "You look good," he said at the reception. "You too," I replied, and meant it. He'd lost weight, cut his hair short, looked less haunted than the last time I'd seen him. We danced once, swayed to some song neither of us knew, and for those 4 minutes we were just two people who'd survived something terrible, who'd come out the other side changed but intact. "Do you ever wonder how different things would have been?" he asked. "If I'd just told you about Melanie from the start? If Dad had been honest about the firm?" "Every day," I admitted. "But we can't live in alternate realities, only the one we have." The song ended. We stepped apart, went back to our separate lives. Sometimes I think about that night in the restaurant, the moment I confronted them, how I thought I knew what I'd find. An affair, a betrayal, something I could understand and categorize and process. Instead, I found the truth, and the truth was so much worse than I could have imagined. Not because my husband had a secret daughter, but because that secret was just the surface. Beneath it lay years of fraud, of lies, of money stolen from innocent people. Beneath it lay a family legacy of deception that pulled everyone into its orbit. I thought I wanted the truth, thought it would set me free. But some truths don't free you. They just show you how trapped you've always been. I still see Dorothy sometimes, the widow who lost everything. She works at a grocery store now, bagging groceries at 76 years old. She recognized me once in the checkout line. "I don't blame you," she said quietly. "You didn't know either. But I wonder if that's true. If I should have seen the signs, should have questioned our comfortable life, should have asked harder questions about where the money came from. Maybe we're all complicit in the lies we want to believe." Melanie and her husband moved to Portland. Fresh start, new city. She sends photos occasionally of their apartment, their dog, their life rebuilt from ashes. My ex remarried last spring, a paralegal from his new firm, someone who knows his history and loves him anyway. I sent a card, wished them well, meant it. I'm dating now, a high school teacher named Daniel. He knows everything. I told him on our second date, laid out the whole sordid story, waited for him to run. "We all have pasts," he said. "At least yours is interesting." He makes me laugh, doesn't treat me like I'm broken, doesn't need to save me, just wants to know me, the me I've become after everything. Last month marked 5 years since that night at the restaurant, 5 years since my life imploded, since I learned that the worst thing wasn't my husband's affair. It was that there was no affair at all, just secrets, and fraud, and a family built on stolen foundation. I don't know if I've forgiven him, my ex-husband, for keeping Melanie secret, for not seeing what his father was doing, for pulling me into a nightmare I never signed up for. But I've forgiven myself, for not knowing, for not seeing, for believing in a life that turned out to be built on lies. That's enough. It has to be. Because the truth is, we all make choices with incomplete information. We all trust the wrong people sometimes. We all build lives on foundations we assume are solid. And sometimes, those foundations crumble. The question isn't whether you could have prevented it. It's who you become after everything falls apart.